Hi, and welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co-host, David.
Hey everyone.
And this week we're going to discuss if either of us are experiencing Genshin Burnout. And I guess jumping right in, Dave, what was it that inspired you to choose this as the topic for this week?
Yeah, so for our topic this week, basically gonna try and self-diagnose ourselves if we have Genshin burnout and to what extent if we do have it. And what made me think of this, or just kind of come up with this idea, was this past week or two, I triggered the returning player bonus in Genshin for the second time in about as many months. Uh, so that's what, end of March, beginning of April, and then I had triggered it, I think, in February, like end of February as well. So essentially, triggering it twice in 2 months got me thinking. It's like, man, am I burned out on the game? Is it just that I'm too busy with things? And it's not that I'm burnt out; it's just I'm busy and unable to spend the time like I've used to been able to. And because when I triggered it the second time, I received like a thing for a survey to basically ask me, why did I quit and why did I choose to come back? And it was very centric to Natlan and the Natlan experience, and so it just kind of got me thinking, and I wanted to, you know, bounce some things off of you and maybe get your thoughts on how you're feeling because I don't know if you've triggered this returning player bonus anytime recently. Uh, but that's kind of where I want to start. In then we can springboard from there.
Okay, that works.
So
Yeah.
have you triggered the returning player bonus ever or anytime recently? I guess.
Yes, I did trigger it recently, although that is not necessarily unusual. I tend to, especially after the Lantern Rite, Chinese New Year event, my play tends to taper off. So I go from logging in fairly often to taking longer breaks, especially when there's not any major events going on. I expect probably as we move into summer, my login rate will go up as I prep for the new version, new Archon, so on and so forth. Occasionally, a new character will come out that'll lure me back, but for the most part, typically spring and early summer tend to be low login periods for me. So it's not unusual for me to walk away, but I will say that that's something that really only started with Fontaine.
Okay.
That
So prior to Fontaine, did you find yourself logging in daily, doing your daily grind, doing your resin burn, and kind of getting your daily primos that way, or were you not even huge on that?
um on that one, I would say through Inazuma, I was pretty good about it. Sumeru, I was hit or miss, especially when the desert came. I usually do the dailies, but my exploration really petered off with the desert.
Okay, so that's an interesting point there that you mentioned. So when we got to Sumeru, okay with the forest areas and exploring those, but then yeah, moving to the wide expanse of the desert, that's when you kind of notice some playtime drop off. That's interesting that you say that because I think I saw a little bit of that as well with the desert in Sumeru, but then when we got to Fontaine, I think I came back and played a bit more and returned to my usual daily rotation, getting things done, and doing my daily commission and everything of that nature in my resin run. Uh, but then I think I found myself going away as they lean more heavily into underwater exploration stuff. So like there's a whole quest line I think involving some. Like I said, I haven't really done it that much, so I can't even
Mhm.
speak what it's all to. But I think it involves some whale and breaking some chains that the whale is tied down under, maybe.
That sounds
In
right.
yeah, I someone can correct me on that or elaborate more perhaps in the comments, but like that quest has been out for I guess Fontaine now what multiple years, and it's still sitting there in my quest log. I haven't done it because I didn't love the underwater exploration. It just feels very sluggish. Um, but with Natlan, if I were to really be self-critical and look at what's dropped my play time down, While yes, sure, there's personal real life things that have just restricted my gaming time in general. Um, I had to make decisions, therefore, with the time I did have of what games I was going to play. And while I did kind of do a purge of gacha games, I think I dropped about 3 games out of my rotation because I wasn't really playing them. I was just literally logging in, doing the dailies, and logging out. You know, you're not really playing the game at that point. Um, that freed up a bit more time for games like Zenless Zone Zero, games like Honkai Star Rail, Nikkei, things like that. But Genshin, I kind of fell away from after doing like the main story quest. And I think part of it actually, in this instance, can be attributed to missing on um, when I missed on the banner
Hmm.
early on. And most of these characters, right, they have synergy with each other. And so if you miss on one or two, yes, I went back and pulled for Malvika on her banner, but on the initial, characters when those were coming out, I kind of felt a little dejected in terms
Yeah.
of continuing to pull. So I wonder if that had something to do with it when I missed out there. But what about you for Natland? Like, so coming into Natland, did you hit it hard and then, like you said, you found yourself backing off, or?
Um, so I would say, yeah, that in the grand, in gotcha usage terms, I did,
I'm sorry to clarify real quick. When I missed
yeah,
on Jalonen, just to clarify, I
Jalon,
missed on
yeah.
Jalonen's banner, and I kind of felt a little dejected with that because I knew she was going to be a great character for a lot of Natlan-based
Mhm.
teams, and then just in general because of her kit. But sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to clarify that for those that missed out on my awful pull of that round.
No, you're good, you're good. Yeah, so I would say for Natlin, I was fairly lackadaisical into it. I did a lot of the story, but I really wasn't compelled to do much exploration. And at least for me, I think that one of the things that has soured me with Genshin, with some self-diagnosis here, is I really don't enjoy gathering materials for characters outside of domains. I'm not a fan of having to run around trying to pick berries in order to get the materials needed in order to level up characters, get them where they need to go. Also, the fact that weekly boss materials are limited to one per boss. Like you can only do the domain once, you can't do it multiple times. Um, is frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. And I think those two sort of bottlenecks really soured me, especially with Chaska and Mavika requiring the same overworld materials. And the overworld materials themselves they're not awful to get, but they're not convenient or easy because they're in that plateau area off to the north west of Natlin, where it's all broken plateaus in water, basically over the ocean. I don't want to call them islands because it's similar to old Apple Archipelago where you just have these big, tall, sheer cliffed islands, plateaus, whatever, mesas, and it
It's fair.
in order to travel between them, I have Chaska, so it's not that bad, but it's still kind of a pain. You're not looking back. I guess hindsight being 2020. You look back at Mondstadt, and a lot of times the materials that you need. Let's go with Wolfhook berries, I think is what they're called. In order to get those for Wolfborn, I'm completely blanking on his. Um, doesn't matter. The materials in Mondstadt, most of them are fairly localized. You can get a decent number of them fairly quickly. You're not having to cover a massive chunk of a map. You're, maybe doing a route of the long edge of a cliff in order to pick up what you need. And there's multiple within there, and it wasn't quite as much of a pain that I'm, running into now. The other part of it is that if you don't pre-farm, trying to get the characters up and good to go it just takes a while. And I know that part of that is, the gotcha system. They want to have you logging in every day to do what you got to do to feel that sense of progress. But, you know, you've already saved up your primos, your star jades, your whatever, and you've gone through the saving portion of it. And once you kind of spent it's okay, great, I want to use this character, and in a lot of cases, you're a week or two out from being able to use that character if you haven't pre-farmed, if you haven't set yourself up already for success. So there's that. It's the reason why Malvika is a character I haven't really used. I pulled her and I just haven't had the energy to get her up and good to go. I'm not really overly interested in trying to get her up and to good to go. Building new characters has kind of hit a point to where I'm just not overly enthused into doing it because then even once you've done everything that you can control, you go onto the relic grind.
Well, I wanna step in here because
Yeah.
you hit on a few things, and I don't want
No, no, you're good. I'm in
to
a
lose my points here
yeah.
as you go, because you bring up a few valid things and some things that I've been thinking about. First, Wolfhook Razor, I think is
Yes, Razor.
the character you were going for. Maybe you forgot. Uh, but yeah, so as far as like gathering materials outside of domain, while they have added quality of life to the game in terms of giving you the general area that you can teleport near to go farm, and have made that easier to locate them. That yeah, that's all well and good. But yeah, for some of those materials, it is a pain in the butt to farm. It's not just a simple run around. And this is kind of goes to my next point, kind of
Mhm.
bleeds into my next point. You actually mentioned Malvika and Chaska and their material being on those, yeah, the mesas, the plateaus, the spires, essentially out in the middle of the ocean, and you have to use um, either Natland characters or the in-game gimmicks that they introduced, transforming into various animals to teleport through various means, um, to navigate those. And I think that shift in terms of what Natlan has introduced in terms of essentially mounts. They've introduced mounts to the game, and if you don't have the character, then you're limited to where you can find those mounts, and they're usually nearby, sure, but you still ultimately have to go to that one spot, spawn them, turn into them, and then go. Or you're quote unquote paying to use a mount whenever, whether it be Malvika's bike, Chaska's, I don't know what you would call that. I would, it's not, but like essentially a witch's broom, right? And I think the introduction of that is kind of what has kind of turned me off to Natlan in terms of exploration and therefore farming, because I, like you, pulled Malvika and haven't really fully built her out yet. I would probably say anywhere, probably 40 to 60% built. I don't know how you want to, if you want to count artifact grind as part of the build or not. Um, Whereas for Jin Yun, Cloud Retainer, who I just pulled on this rerun banner going on currently, I literally just finished building her today. I got her to level 90. Her talents are 8 of 8. Similar to what you mentioned, I'm limited by weekly bosses, and hers is one of the most annoying one. It's the Narwhal
Mhm.
thing, which is an awful fight. 30-second fight, forced into 4-minute fights because of cutscenes that you can't reach the character as it slowly, lunges around out of reach of things.
Yeah.
Which I think also contributes to uh, my negative attitude towards, growing or farming new characters. Because if we were, if we remember, raid bosses from Liyue, Mondstadt, we're talking, like fighting Tartaglia or Child when he was a raid boss, right? Or Azdaha, right? Yes, Azdaha did have like an invulnerable phase, so you technically had two phases type things. But those were relatively quick fights. The boss was like Child is essentially always attackable, and you can finish that fight pretty quick. Um, the dragon, the very first one, name is slipping me now. Now I'm forgetting. You can do that you can do that fight very quickly, um, and even faster. Like if you have somebody like a Ganyu or something. And so some of these raid bosses mechanics, they're trying to get too flashy and make every boss fight too episodic, too grandiose, um, and making like this huge high production action scene, as opposed to you're actually fighting the boss. It's you're just sitting waiting while it does something. So I think that's contributed to some of this too. And I didn't even plan on like even getting into that, but I just bunny trailed there since we were talking about raid bosses.
I don't know, but I mean,
No,
it all builds off of itself. Like it's these
but
little things that all kind of
mhm,
bricks in the wall.
but to back to the point I was trying to make before I bunny walled about bosses, it kind of that even that is a small fraction of kind of what I'm getting at in terms of instead of just being able to run around and you can get from place to place relatively quickly via foot and like your stamina bar. Now I got to get on this Mavica bike mount, and then that'll make things, more efficient in traveling as things get more spread out. Or now I'm having to fly from archipelago to archipelago structure type thing, and I don't know. It gives the player unnecessary steps in what should be a simple task of farming. Um, and I think that's what's really killed the exploration for me. And then like some of these puzzles as well that don't give you any type of intonation on how to solve them. I'm not saying that they need to be super duper easy, but like the puzzles in Inazuma where you had to light up things with electrical charge in a certain order, certain pattern, like that's intuitive. You can solve that, figure that out yourself. Some of these other ones aren't as intuitive. And for like a casual player or a player that just kind of wants like a slight challenge, but an easier time still being able to figure it out on their own, it just kind of dissuades you from doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we started to see in Sumeru, because like if I think back to like the genie things and the invisible walls and those puzzles in Sumeru were really annoying, and you couldn't even possibly know about the genie in the bottle unless you happened onto a random world side quest. Uh,
Yeah.
and so those type of that type of thing and I'll toss it back to you here because I
Yeah.
know I've been rambling after I cut you off. So pretty hip.
No, you're
But
good.
that kind of trend has, I think, become just more and more their focus as we moved into Fontaine and then now into. But maybe, well, what are your thoughts on that? Did I touch on something or that you want to expand on? Or
Well, no, I think that you're bunny trailing or you're expanding into something that I've been thinking about my own self a little bit, which is, and we did this way back. I think it was season 1 or 2. We did exploration as content as an episode. I apologize, I don't have the exact episode number pulled up, but I can grab that just 1 second. Yeah, it was actually our episode 10, season finale of the first season. There was exploration as content and how sort of the limitations of that. Um, but I feel like part of the problem is that when Genshin came out, we bring this up a lot. Genshin came out in a very unique time. That it hit the market when people were at home. They didn't have a lot to do. They were locked in and they were looking and hungry for content. A free MMO functionally was very appealing. Um, we are now functionally 3-4 years away from that time period. We're now in a period where people are busy. We've got or more or less back to normal, at least in that regard. And I don't think Genshin has reacted well to it. They've continued to double down on a lot of the same content, and I think that's hurting it. As you mentioned, the more overworld questy type content, the exploration as content, the sub quests and so forth that in an MMO are interesting. Having that in an MMO is something that is um, really enjoyable, but the motivations when you're playing gotchas versus when you're playing a full MMO are different. The time investment is expectations are different. There's a lot of little things that I think are that when you're playing Genshin, I think at this point a lot of us are looking for. Look, I want to log in, get my dailies done in under 15 minutes, and move on. I want to get my characters good to go. I want to do my weeklies, want to do my stuff, and a lot of the events I don't want to necessarily spend more than an hour on. That's not a knock against Genshin's world or so forth. I'm still interested in the main story, but a lot of the side content feels like fluff, and I'm not necessarily interested in spending the amount of time that they are asking to go around in order to do minor subquests and minor little things for rewards that aren't overly valuable. I mean, they're not worth the time. A handful of primos or a pet is not something that motivates me, especially in a game where nobody's ever going to see it. It's
Yeah,
functionally a
you
single player game.
mentioned side quests and how much time they ask you to invest into some of these. I harken back to the Aranara quest and that whole chain in
Mm.
Sumeru and just how tedious and awful that quest line felt.
Yeah, the
Some
trees.
people may have loved the story, but yeah, that quest line was just I was ready to be done.
Yeah, or the trees that have you collect the regional seals that you then use to turn in order to level things up. Like when I 100%ed the Inazuma one. I have not 100%ed any of the others left because just getting all of the chests required to get that leveled up doesn't occur through natural play for me. Like I don't open up enough chests, I don't do enough exploring for that to be a meaningful reward.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat on that as well. I think yeah, Inazuma was the last region I fully maxed out the tree, and then yeah, I'd have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure all I definitely know none of them completed, but I wonder if any of them are even half completed. Maybe Sumeru and Fontaine, but Natlan definitely not. I've barely explored Natlan outside of current story quest.
Yeah, and you'd have to have been really scraping Sumeru because you got to remember like half of the levels for that are locked behind the desert. And I don't know
Yeah,
how much
I
time you
did.
spend in the desert.
Yeah, I did eventually. I've gone back and done some Sumeru quests because I was there was a very long scroll bar in my journal in my quest log, and so I
Yeah.
just kind of started at the bottom and worked my way up. And most of those ones at the bottom were Natlan ones, or I mean, were Sumeru ones. And so I've worked through a few. So I've spent some more time in the desert, but not as much as yeah. Inazuma was probably the last big zone that I really got into. Though I have been doing because of Jin and farming her materials. You know, boss is like this the water spirit boss that's in the valley, that newer valley region, and then the crystal jade that you have to find is in there as well. So I've been doing that one while I farmed her materials. And even that boss too was kind of annoying to beat because there were times when I would get up out of your range. More to that point. So it's been more explored, but Natlan itself, yeah, not touched it. Now, and another thing I think that's what you talk about how long have we been playing the game and when it came out versus now, like what's changed. And I think for the general populace, yeah, 2020, what was it, September 2020 when the game came out. Those were very different times. There was obviously some global events occurring, and I know for me, I started then in February of 21. And so, I mean, that's a little over 4 years now that I've been playing Genshin. And but like I said, I'm still very vested in the main story and seeing where they take that and how this story arc goes. And then once they resolve this story arc, how do they continue the game, right? What do we stay in Tevi? Do we travel to another dimension somehow and link it that way? So in terms of the main quest, main story, I'm with them. I'm there. But the draw for overworld exploration and grinding out for 2, 5, or 10 primo gems, depending on the size of the chest, um, that's just not there for me anymore. And I think it's because the game direction they've taken, especially here recently with Natland, is just the scope of it. They're making it too massive. Like we already have a lot of land to explore as it is, just in terms of what regions have been exposed. But Natland feels even more spaced apart, and like there's more exploration things because they've now given us quote unquote mount. I think better term.
Yeah, and I think I've heard it said from other creators. I know at least Vars, who's a creator I listen to, has mentioned it that it feels like Genshin is doubling down on the explorer side of the game gamer personality matrix, where you have lore people, you have exploration people, and you have combat people. These are the rough three groups that he's mentioning.
Fair breakdown of them, yeah.
Yeah, and that basically, if you're an exploration player, you're eating good. If you're a story player, you eat good about half the time. When the patch first comes out or the version just comes out, you have 2 or 3 good patches of story, and then nothing happens for the other 4. And then if you're a combat player, there's at this point, I'm not sure there's really any reason to come back. ZZZ does combat better. Wuthering Waves does combat better. Um, I'll be honest, even Honkai technically does combat better, at least within its own niche. I'm gonna say it does it great, but if you're a turn-based RPG person, Honkai Star Rail will give you what you're looking for. If you're a action RPG player, ZZZ or Wuthering Waves will give you what you're looking for. Genshin Combat just isn't reactive enough. At least to me, it feels clunky. A lot of characters have a lot of lag time at the end of their abilities that can be frustrating. Um, just in general, it's not a amazing system, and they don't seem to want to lean into it or do anything to really clean it up or I don't want to say revolutionize it, but a lot of what we're seeing are just X character with more um, at least from what I have seen. That's what Fontaine felt like. That's what Natlin has felt like, especially with the Water Dragon that came out, where his Kamehameha Wave is it's dead
Oh,
simple
New
combat.
Bullet.
Yeah, Nouvelette. His combat rotation is dead simple. You you use his E to generate particles, and then you just Kamehameha and you pull a 360. Okay, that's from a gameplay standpoint, that's the most efficient thing to do. But if it's the most efficient thing to do, it's not necessarily engaging in any shape or form. There's nothing to hook into there, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think breaking down the player base into three groups like that, I think that's a fair breakdown. And I guess if I were to look at myself and my evolution over the course of the game, I probably came into it, looking for some fun combat and like the elements interacting with each other and how that goes. And then I guess, and then ranking it would have been story. I mean, it would have been combat, story, and then exploration. Third in terms of what I was looking for. And then as time has gone on, I guess really I'm sticking around for the story, and then the combat and the exploration. And since once the main story stuff is done and I'm not attached to side stories that are fluff, I'll be attached maybe to side stories that are characters, the character side stories, and then even more so if they're characters that I use or like. And then because combat, like I said, yeah, it's a little bit more simple, and there are some kinks with it that could be ironed out, I feel. But if I want that action RPG flashy combat, like ZZZ's, scratching that itch right now. Like that, we both gotten back into that, and that has been extremely enjoyable. Like I do not get tired of perfect countering, an enemy's attack, or perfect dodging, or anything like that, or just the way it flows and how flashy it is, and it feels impactful. It's ironic because we're talking about Genshin Impact, but like the combat in Zenless Zone Zero is actually what feels impactful. Kind of feel the hits, and like counters feel like, and blocks feel like they're countering, dodges feel like they're dodging type stuff. And Zenless Zone Zero just lets you dive in and hit the combat. You don't have to, tinker around with overworld exploring. You just boom, you go right to whatever it is you're trying to farm. And then Star Rail, to your point, while yes, not action RPG, is turn-based RPG. I am a fan of turn-based RPGs, and so yeah, and it does a good job of scratching that, particular niche, right? And while there is some exploration freedom in both Zenless Zero and Honkai, it's kind of like we looked down on, what was it, Final Fantasy 12? Was it that was like the long linear tutorial that was 8 hours long?
13.
Right? 13. We looked down on that, I think, as a general player base. Obviously, there are some people that didn't mind it so much, but in general, I think the general consensus would be we look down on that. But for a gacha game, I don't mind that type of linear exploration that Star Rail and ZZZ give us. For a AAA game, obviously that we expect a little more from a AAA game, but for a game that we just want to kind of get in, get out, it's meant to be played mobily, right? That's what we all forget. We all have these nice fancy PC clients that are really convenient for this old guy here that isn't good with action RPGs on the phone. But in reality, a lot of these games are mobile games meant to be played on the go, so just being able to dive in and out real quick, like in Zenless Zone Zero or like in Star Rail, which I think Genshin's kind of getting away from that a little bit.
Yeah, and I do think that there is a bit of an opportunity cost with how much that they're investing in exploration. That, I think that's where part of the problem is, that there's a little bit too much of an opportunity cost there. But I don't want to end. We've veered more and more negative and critical. Um, so I guess to try
Bring
and
us back.
bring
Bring
us
us back.
back, be end on a high note. Is there something in your mind that would, help fix the burnout? Is it just a question of, quality of life fixes and so on and so forth that would help bring you back? Or, I guess if you were, for whatever reason, isekai'd into the body of Dawe right now, what would you do in order to try and
Well,
help with the burn?
as far as like to help with my burnout, in terms, well, I'll start with kind of what I guess I am doing.
Hmm.
I'll speak to that because throwing the question about what would I do if I was Dawei. I got to think on that. So let me stall a
Okay.
little bit and answer for what I am doing to kind of help with the burnout, because I think my burnout was probably at its worst when I missed on Shalom. That was probably when I just felt like, man, I missed out on her. She's going to be a big catalyst for a lot of teams that you can build around with Natlan characters, and so I felt really put off with that. So I've gotten over that, and I've just kind of decided to focus on kind of the characters that I do have and like, and build those up. It's why I pulled for Jin Yun. And so what's kind of really revitalized me is creating a new team with a character who is aesthetic and I just kind of liked from a story perspective, well, from a lore perspective. So that's kind of helping me because what it's doing is it's forcing me to go back and explore and do some of those older zones that do have the more simple exploration concepts that I like, uh, and that because this is like was always supposed to be a casual, laid back game experience. It's not supposed to be super intensive in terms of like really, well, in terms of really anything. That's what this game is supposed to be. If I want a challenge, I'll go play something else. Um, this is the laid back at peace game, and so by forcing myself to go back and farm materials in older zones, and then therefore stumble onto like older puzzles that are some of those more simple, intuitive. Hey, this is what we're supposed to do to solve the puzzle and figure it out. Like I mentioned previously, that's kind of helped a bit. I'm that's taking me back to the game when I really enjoying it, and so that's what I'm doing, and focusing on that, and maybe not focusing so much on pulling for new characters. Like I'll focus on how to build them and kind of team synergies and stuff like that. But I'm not actively maybe going to be pulling for them myself because I know what that entails, similar to building characters like we talked about. So that's what's helped. If I was away, I mean, to me, and again, this is just me off the top of head. I don't have any numbers in front of me. I don't have any results of any player surveys or anything like that. I just try and think about it from what I read or what I'm feeling or what I'm seeing in the community, and it's almost like they could go for a reset in terms of bringing it back to the basics, bringing it back to the strong foundation of the game, and kind of the old acronym, like the old acronym, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Just kind of getting back to that. Stop trying to make everything an episodic adventure sequence. But that's what would resonate for me. But I completely understand if that's unpopular and not at all what their data shows, and therefore why they're continuing to put in the direction they are.
Hmm.
Um, and while I do look forward to Shinez Naya and where the story is going to ultimately head to, from a gameplay perspective, I come at it reserved because of what Natlan has expanded into. But I still am very much enjoying the story, music, and the writing of such. Like I've always enjoyed that. This is again just from the burnout perspective of like exploration and free time I would spend doing open world puzzles inside. But what about you? I think I've rambled on and stalled enough for you to have an answer for yourself.
Yeah, for myself, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of at peace with the idea that I'm a little burned out and I probably won't be playing as much. I've already mentioned that this has been a cycle that I've gone through at least once or twice ahead of time. So, truth be told, I'm more than happy to just kind of come back whenever the story is there and play. I do think that if I was in charge, if I was making the decisions, I think the two things I would do is, you mentioned going back to basics, and I think a system overhaul, a combat system overhaul would be appropriate. Something to shake things up. One of the big issues at the moment is that, or at least for me, is that a lot of element combinations are just dead combinations. Um, Electro Cry is functionally pointless as far as the game is concerned. Um, Pyro with anything else other than Hydro and Cryo doesn't really do anything of note. Go in and tweak them. I know that there's been a number of characters that are sort of built directly off of how certain effects exist at this point in time. So I understand that there would be some carve outs and some concerns with specific characters that they might need to look into. But just in general, I feel like the element combinations are no longer fresh. Everyone's kind of solved them. And any combination, they've tried to fix them by releasing characters that fix the problem instead of going to the root issue, which is that these elemental reactions do not function. They're bad elemental reactions. They need to be resolved. Um, Whether they do that, going in and digging into the code and so forth might be more of a Herculean effort than they're willing to put in. I get that, but that would be, for Snezhnaya, I think that would be sort of the big focus. I would pull back on scope of exploration and really focus in on that. The other part of it would be uh, the design of future characters, not from a necessarily look standpoint, although one could argue Natman was a bit of a step in a weird direction. Like they didn't really know kind of what they wanted to do with Natlin, so they kind of just went whatever. It feels more modern than a lot of the other areas. But regardless, more from a design point of view, I feel like the Night Soul forms were something that was supposed to be interesting that just did pan out. That there's sort of a problem of, I believe it's called parasitic design, where they've created a set of designs that are self-contained, but because they exist within themselves, they don't interact with anything else and they don't play well with anything else. And so they become an archetype kind of unto themselves. And until you get enough characters to really support it, it feels like a dead archetype. And then once you do have characters that support it, because it felt like a dead archetype from the beginning, a lot of people haven't bought into it. So there's no motivation to buy into it later. Unlike Honkai, where the team builds can be wonky. There have Ruan Mei is sort of I would say the go-to example. When she came out, she had to help a bunch of other people other than Break in order to make her viable for when eventually Break came out. And they kind of tried to do that with Zillonin, but it was weird enough and off the wall enough, and everyone's kind of going like, well, this is only really for Natlin. If you can get through Natlin with Novelette, why would I bother buying into this new archetype? Move away from that. Try and you can do interesting styles we still don't have a dot character or a debuff character. I mentioned that before. We don't have a spin to win character or someone who's that sort of weird archetype and things like that. Be more careful with the character designs going forward because at the moment they're just not. Natlin's ideas did not pan out at all. Get to Snezhnaya, the characters either need to be more generalist or you need to start carving unique archetypes out of what you already have in order to make it work. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I think that we kind of covered the topic here. So I know we have some events that we want to discuss, and also we're going to do a quick review of Castris and kind of share our experience with her from Star Rail. Before we do that, some news. I'm going to keep it in the Hoyoverse realm since we do have some news that we learned here this week. And that's going to be Zenless Zone Zero announced that they are going to be coming to Xbox in June. So we don't have a specific date as of right now, but I did see something that it looks like it's going to be coming to Xbox in June. So for those that are interested in console experience, that will be an option there. But moving on from that, want to talk about some events because I know we have a few. especially with Star Rail, a lot of things going on there. So for that, I will throw it over to Steve.
So, as far as events go, let's start with Honkai Star Rail, since it's the 2-year anniversary that we've got currently going on. The big event going on at the moment for that is Star Rail World, all caps, a functionally a cookie clicker idle type game. It is a little bit time gated, but you can get the vast majority of it beaten within the first day or two. So it's fine. It's a little. It could take a little bit and be a little bit boring if I'm being 100% honest, but it's fine. If you like exponential number goes up, it can be entertaining. And the rewards are not bad either because again it's second anniversary. As for Genshin Impact, the event going on at the moment is Unlimited Fighting Championship, a another combat event, and finally for ZZZ, Little Knight Big Charge is the event going on there, where we once again beat the Knight Bang Boo, who is going to have us help it out 10 challenges in order so that he can apparently get a princess. Um, so those are the three events going on at the moment. All pretty decent as far as things go, but that's about it there. Dave, I guess we'll jump into Casters.
Yeah, so we had cast drop here this week in Honkai Star Rail. So as we typically do when a new character drops in a Hoyo game, we'll run through a quick review of the character, breaking down their build, good team comp that we think will work well for them. And then if either of us pulled for the character, of course, we can talk about our own anecdotal experience with them. So with Castris, so just to break her down, she is going to be a quantum element in the path of remembrance in Honkai Star Rail. So be following that path, meaning she's going to have a summon. And personally, the summon being a dragon looks awesome. But to get down to the thick of it here and the nitty gritty, for builds and teams, starting with her build, again, aside from the signature light cone, you are going to have a few other options. Granted, with Remembrance being as new to the game as it is, we don't have too many options yet. But as of right now, outside of the signature light cone, do have the best option for her would be the Sweat Now, Cry Less light cone. This was the light cone I believe given out back when the Remembrance Traveler was introduced, if memory serves. So if you do have that one, that will be the next best option for her. Whether it be superimposed 5 or not superimposed at all, it is still going to be the best option for her. And then if you don't have either of those, you're actually going to be looking at Time Waits for No One is going to be her next best option. This is just for those of you that are questioning if you heard me right. Time Waits for No One is actually her third best light cone option. Yes, this is Bailu's signature weapon. Yes, this is not a Remembrance light cone. But because of the passive that would trigger on her, increases the wearer's max HP by 18% at no superimpositions and up to 30% at full superimpositions. If you do have this one or did get this one off of the standard banner at any point, that is actually going to be her third best option because Castris is going to be an HP scaler. So with all that being said, for light cones, moving towards the best relic set, wouldn't you know it, we've had a newer relic set get released here within the last patch cycle or two, and lo and behold, it's going to be for Castris. So that's going to be the Poet of Morning Collapse is going to be her best relic set. So this is the set where it's 2-piece bonus going to increase that quantum damage by 10%, and the 4-piece is actually going to decrease the wearer's speed by 8%. And before entering the battle, if the wearer's speed is less than 110, and then another threshold if it's less than 95, it'll increase your crit rate by 20 and or 32% respectively. This effect will also apply to the wearer's memo sprite. So this means that the slower Castris is, the more crit rate she and ultimately her dragon are going to have. And please note, this is when the battle begins, or entering the battle. So anything that boosts speed during the course of battle or after the battle is started will not remove this buff because it's when you're entering battle. So I just want to bear that in mind. And then if you don't have that set yet, or while you are farming for that set, the other option for her is going to be a kind of a hybrid of the Scholar Lost and Erudition set, combined with either the Longevous Disciple, Genius of the Brilliant Stars, or if you can just get another two piece of the Poet Morning Claps while you farm up four piece. Because the Scholar of Lost and Erudition will give you the two-piece bonus of the crit rate, and then we go Longevous Disciple because that gives you the two-piece set of plus HP percentage. So, and perhaps maybe you've already farmed that from various other support that we've had in past. For her best planetary sets, you're going to be looking at Bone Collection, Serene, Demine.
The
I'm sure,
mezzanine.
I'm sure one of those has to be correct, right? But this is going to be the best option for her, and that's going to be because it increases max HP, and when the rare's max HP is 5,000 or higher, it increases the crit damage of your Memo Sprite by 28%. So a lot of crit rate, a lot of crit damage, a lot of HP. That's essentially what we're looking at when it comes to substats on the artifacts. And then in terms of main stats for the body, crit damage is going to be the main priority on the body, but if not crit damage, HP would also be acceptable just because of how she scales off of HP. For feet, we're going to want to stay away from speed boots. One of the rare characters you don't want to put speed boots on, again, because of her relic set. You don't want to go over those thresholds and lose out on those buffs. So you'll actually be looking at HP percentage on the feet. For the planar sphere, HP percentage is going to be better than quantum damage. While quantum damage boosts are acceptable, HP percentage will outscale quantum damage on the planar sphere a vast majority of the time. And then finally on the link rope, shocker, it's more HP. So if you have HP or you know, traditionally aren't hitting the DPS builds, right? And you're like, man, I'm getting all these HP pieces. Stress is your unit. So that's going to be build. And then as far as some team combinations here, some team synergies, if you are somebody that goes for the best of the best and the most premium of the premium, Chris with Tribby with either Remembrant Traveler or Trailblazer, excuse me, Remembrance Trailblazer or Sunday, and then your healer would be either Gallagher or Locha. For the didn't have Tribby, you can sub her out and put in Ruan May. And if you have Midel, you can do Midel, Tribby, and then again Gallagher, Locha. And then if you're kind of looking at a free-to-play team, Castra, Pela, Remembrance, Trailblazer, and Gallagher again. I did see, I did want to mention this just because I thought it was hilarious. A little bit of a meme, I think, but maybe some viability if it's just what you got, or maybe you're a Blade lover. But Blade, unfortunately, has kind of fallen off a cliff in terms of DPS. Not getting too much love here as of recent. There is actually a build where you build him as pure support because Castris doesn't have a traditional energy bar. She gains quote unquote energy by team losing or healing health. Blade, essentially, because he damages himself and heals himself, he essentially is an energy battery for Castris. So you actually build him in a way that is just pure support, all the bonus healing, all the bonus stuff like that, and you actually don't really build him as a damage dealer, just so he can be a battery charger for Castris. So that is worth mentioning if you are a Blade haver or a Blade lover and kind of want to go a meme route. I'll be interested to see the viability of it. But anyway, I wanted to mention that. Now for Castris, I know we both last week in the episode we talked about Castris because of the global passive, and we talked about if we were going to pull for her. I was committed to pulling for her. Steve, I know you were on the fence. I did pull for her. She did come home in soft pity, and within the same 10 pull, I also got a Bronya. So I now have an E3 Bronya, and then I got my Castris, which sets me up perfectly for a guarantee on the next 5-star character I want to pull for, because there are some on the horizon I'm pretty excited about. But Steve, what about you? Did you come off the fence, and which side did you land on?
So I didn't land on pulling. I decided that as much as I'm not a fan of the precedent, I liked the character, and at bare minimum, you know, it's a line I can always cross in the future of go like, you know what, I'm done. Um, so at the moment, I decided to pull, which turned out great because literally the first 10 pull I did on zero pity, she came home. So I'm a proud castress owner, which did allow me to actually turn around and get her light cone, um, and still be safe for upcoming characters, future supports for her as well. Um, I have to say, I mean, I do enjoy her. She is a fun character. I just again, it's that nagging little universal talent that she has. That's unfortunately a bit of a fly in the ointment. But such is life. For the moment, things are good. Can't complain too much there.
Yeah, it's been nice. I actually was able to kind of push some like MOC content that I hadn't been able to push with 3 stars before because my Trafcon Black Swan team have kind of fallen off a little bit. So hopefully they do get some buffs in the future. But something also worth noting that I just want to touch briefly with the events and the anniversary and such. So we do have access as players, every player that logs in, and you may have mentioned this, but worth noting because we're talking about Castros's team, and I mentioned there's a team that has Ruan Mei, and then Luocha is a viable healer for her as well. Every player that logs in will get one of this new currency that is for this new shop that they just released. And in this new shop, you have all the standard banner characters plus Luocha and Rune Mei in, so you can actually choose to purchase one of those if you didn't have them or missed their banners. um, I've heard other people talk about they're saving this as they're free to play until they get an idea of what characters maybe will be added in the future. It's completely up to you. Or again, you can use it to pull on to get a standard banner character or a standard banner Eidolon, essentially, if you want to do that. But if you are looking for kind of a quick, boost to your account or a quick boost to a caster's team because you don't have Tribi or you don't have any of these recent characters, Ruinmei and Luocha are in there. I would make the argument that Ruinmei would be a better pick over Luocha because there are a lot of healers in the game that do what Luocha does. I'd also argue that some that do it better. Uh, Specifically looking at like Gallagher as a very free to play friendly character, being a 4-star unit and being one of the best, if not the best 4-star unit. A fantastic healer. And so I would lean towards Rune Mei, who provides, as you alluded to in our episode earlier when we were talking about Genshin, she buffs a lot of different party comp. She plug and plays into a lot of different teams, whether it be a break team, whether it be a hyper carry team, or whatever have you, because of the buffs she provides. And while there are other supports, she is still very strong and fits well with Castris, whereas Luocha, there are a lot of others that heal, and some, again, I argue, that do it better. So I did want to mention that real quickly in terms of team composition and how to play in your account a little. So that's going to do it for our Hoyoverse portion of the podcast. Want to talk very briefly about some news outside of Hoyoverse and going on in the gacha world. So very quickly, just to talk, Etheria Restart. This is going to be a turn-based RPG, Honkai Star Rail type vibes. If you've seen some gameplay of it, it was announced here the beta test for that is going to be launching on May 8th. Again, that's the beta test will start May 8th for those that are able to take part in that. And then the game will be going live for full release on June 5th. So we're going to be getting that very early on in the summer for another gacha game to try out. I'll probably be giving that a go. Sure, it'll have a PC client, rare when games don't nowadays. Looking at you, Black Beacon, that just launched this week without a PC client. But anyway, Etheria Restart, beta May 8th, full release June 5th. One of my favorite gacha games, Nikke, Goddess of Victory. They have a new event going on and introduced a new character, Crust, who has a little bit of a story relationship with the character that was just in the last event, Bredy. I believe they also have some team synergy as well, if I'm not mistaken. But the other thing going on with Nikke right now as we gear up for our 2.5-year anniversary, is they are currently doing their popularity voting for characters. So for those that are unfamiliar with it, every day you can vote up to 5 times. You can vote for the same character for your favorite Nikke. The winning Nikke will get a free skin designed, which we'll also get to vote on 3 concept arts for it once we know who the winner is. We get 3 concept arts, then we as a player base vote on our favorite skin, and then everybody will get that skin for free a few months down the road. So it's just worth noting that that's going on right now. And like I mentioned with the 2.5 year anniversary coming up, the live stream for this is going to be happening April 19th. So it's going to be this Friday, if I'm not, or this Saturday, Friday, depending on where you are in the world. April 19th, it's going to be the 2.5 year live stream for Nikkei. Girls Frontline 2, another gacha in my rotation. They just also started part 2 of their big event going on right now. And they dropped the new character Mekti. So again, Girls Frontline 2 being globally a year behind the Chinese server, we have a little bit of a snapshot into the future. And Mekti is going to be a supporter who uses an assault rifle, a lot of assault rifle users. But she is a supporter for a corrosion damage team. So her team comp is a little bit niche, and on the global side isn't the prevailing team yet, because there are some other characters to come out that we see in China, but we don't see yet in global. So she will probably have a bit more usage later on down the road, and it will also be more geared towards boss fights, specifically the Gunsmoke event that goes on within your platoon. But Mekti has a huge synergy with the character that just came out, Kluke, as well as I think it's Pritia, I think is one of the cat girls from the standard banner. I think Pritia. I won't remember the exact pronunciation. It's going to drive me nuts if I don't. Right. But anyway, that's going to be what Girls Frontline 2 is looking at right now. And then lastly, just to discuss real quickly, Brown Dust 2 introduced a new character that they have finally brought over from Brown Dust 1, and that's Wilhelmina. They introduced her. She was a fencer, kind of a fencer appearance or sword style. So they finally brought her over into Brown Dust 2, an event going on as well, revolving around her and a couple other characters. And I would imagine there's going to be another Wilhelmina skin coming out in the near future, because usually when they release a new character like this, they usually give them a second skin and therefore a second ability around the corner. But that's going to do it for us this week. We do want to thank you guys for joining us. Let us know, if you've experienced Burnout in Genshin or any other Hoyoverse game or any gacha game in general, maybe. And did you eventually get back into the game? Did you eventually just uninstall it and call it a day with that? Let us know down below. If you did enjoy the episode and you'd like to show your support, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with questions or suggestions for the show. We also have the link to our Discord in the description, so you can join us over there for news, game nights, and content notifications. Join us next week. I know we're a little late to the party, but we are going to discuss the 3.2 Honkai Star Rail story quest that came out while we were on break, so we did want to touch it. We're not forgetting about you. But until then, keep gaming.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate.